Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gentile, a New York Times article found that New York City landlords are filing evictions 3.6 times faster in zip code hardest hit by COVID. Roughly 68% of these residents are people of color. How are the pandemic eviction filings impacting communities of color and vulnerable populations? And by the way, do you have any data that shows how many of those making $99,000 in income have not paid or have filed for evictions?
Thank you, Congresswoman Velázquez. If I could take a moment just to clarify that both the congressman and the witness are wrong that rent is not due under the federal eviction moratorium. What the federal eviction moratorium does is prevent evictions, and in doing so, prevent the spread of and deaths from COVID-19. The rent...
Mr. Chairman, if the gentleman respect the witness, this is my time. It is my time.
Mr. Jordan, we're not going to tolerate that.
The rent is still due, and low-income renters have done all they could during the pandemic to pay it. They have taken out loans. They have used credit cards. They have put off buying store-bought food or paying for internet that their children need for virtual school. They have made trade-offs to pay the rent when they can, and when they can't, they've fallen behind, which is why the emergency rental assistance is so essential to pay the arrears that have accrued during the pandemic. To your question, yes, the pandemic has certainly exacerbated pre-existing inequities for people of color. Pre-pandemic, due to decades of systemic racism in multiple systems, people of color are disproportionately likely to be renters, to be extremely low income, to be behind on rent, to experience homelessness. And COVID-19 compounded these inequities. So Black and Native American people were disproportionately likely to contract and die from COVID-19. Black and Latino workers were disproportionately likely to lose jobs. And people of color disproportionately fell behind on rent. So today, about 25% of all Black renters are behind on rent compared to 10% of white. And of those 6.5 million renters behind on rent, those 6.5 million households behind on rent, the majority of them are people of color.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, your organization found that the corporate landlord, Pretim Partners, has moved to evict tenants in majority Black areas at a much higher rate than tenants in majority white areas. Can you explain how some corporate landlords are moving to evict tenants in a racially disparate manner?
Thank you, Representative Velázquez. That's correct. So we, earlier this year, the Pretim Partners is a private equity firm. It's along with Ares Management, another large private equity firm. They've been, buying more homes, and earlier this year, purchased a company called Front Yard Residential. They own lots of single-family rental homes. We noticed that, they were filing to evict hundreds of residents in DeKalb and Clayton counties, two majority Black counties in Georgia. And it was frankly striking, just the massive, the large volume, like I said, 113 filings in just the first 8 days of the year. And so frankly, we were struck. And so we took a closer look at some of their filings and compared it to other counties where they owned homes, Polk and Seminole counties in Florida, two majority white counties in Florida, and found that they have been filing to evict renters in DeKalb and Clayton counties, the majority Black counties in Georgia, at this point 7 times higher rates, so much higher rates.
Can you tell us what share of evictions in the areas that you have tracked have been filed by corporate landlords, and if this is a trend nationwide?
As we looked at a number of the areas that we've tracked, so cities like, or counties like Maricopa County, which is Phoenix, Harris County, which is Houston, DeKalb County, which is Atlanta and some of the suburbs, right? Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, we found that the majority of the eviction filings were by these large corporate landlords with 1,000 units or more. So, not mom and pop landlords, but really it was the larger corporate landlords that have been driving the evictions. We've looked at this a few different times over the last several months. It was true back in December. It was true in September, just after the CDC eviction moratorium